Section 3 of Orpheus with his Lute by W.M.L. Hutchinson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Coming of Zeus. When Urania made an end of her story, there was silence for a little space. Then Orpheus, with an eager, questioning look, turned to Calliope, but forbore to speak. "What is it you would ask, child?" said she. "I would ask," he said, "how Earth's prophecy to Cronos was fulfilled. I think it must have come true, for I have never heard of any king of the sky but almighty Zeus. Was it Zeus, then, who overthrew Cronos at last? And was Zeus one of those children whom Rhea hid from their cruel father?" "Child," answered Calliope, "beware of rash words when you speak of the immortals, and tax them not lightly with cruelty or wrong, for their ways are not as man's ways, nor their thoughts as man's thoughts. As for the downfall of Cronos, it came to pass indeed according to Earth's saying, and you shall hear the tale, but not now. See, dawn is here already, and you must be gone." So saying, she rose up, and her sisters also. "Farewell," they said to him, "farewell, our Orpheus, till the next moon is at the full." And waving their hands to him, with a gracious gesture of parting, they glided away among the trees. Only Calliope lingered, and taking the boy's hand, led him to a small round pool, so thickly fringed with maidenhair and white poppies that he had not yet seen it, though it lay hard by the well. "You have tasted," she said, "the water of memory. This, which rises so near it, is the water of forgetfulness, which we should have given you to drink had you not chosen to become a minstrel. Look, as I dip this myrtle branch into it, how it grows clouded, as it were mingled with milk. This branch you must take home, and cast it into the spring near your hut, where all the woodcutters are wont to come for water, and you shall soon find that not one of them remembers your song of yesterday. And now, little one, you must hie on your way. Fear not to miss it, for here is a guide that will lead you straight as crow can fly." Even as she spoke, a dusky ring-dove fluttered down from the oak above them and lighted at Orpheus's feet. He stooped to stroke its glossy neck, but forthwith it spread its wings and flew slowly down one of the green aisles that opened on the glade. "Follow the bird of peace," said Calliope, and with a last kiss she turned and was gone. Orpheus went forward along the path the dove had taken, guided sometimes by the sight of its hovering wings, and sometimes by its soft cooing from the overarching boughs. There was a strange lightness in his feet, as though they too were winged, and it seemed to him almost that he could feel feathery pinions brush his ankles as he sped along. Here and there his way was carpeted with wild strawberries, which his bright-eyed guide would alight among, pecking daintily at their scarlet fruit, while the child feasted also, and thought he had never found berries so large or so sweet before. How far he thus journeyed through the forest mazes he could not guess, but the sun was high in heaven when he saw before him blue smoke curling upwards through the trees, and, running forwards, found himself in the little clearing where stood his father's hut. The dove he could no longer see. He called softly, "Thanks, thanks, dear bird," and heard a far-off coo that seemed to answer farewell. Mindful of Calliope's bidding, he went first to the spring hard by, and cast in the sprig of myrtle, to whose leaves the water of forgetfulness still clung like drops of milky dew. As he turned towards the hut, his father came from the doorway with a pitcher in his hand. "Welcome, little son," he said. "I heard you would be home at noontide, and left my work to make ready a meal for you. Come in and eat, but first fill me this pitcher, for I am thirsty." Orpheus filled the pitcher, and when his father had drunk a long draught, they went into the hut and sat down to eat. And even as Calliope foretold, Oiagros asked his son never a word about his absence. Moreover, it was plain from his talk that he had no memory of what had befallen the day before. Was it only by lucky chance, Orpheus wondered, that his father had tasted of the enchanted water in the very moment of their meeting? He was afraid to say anything that might betray the secret the fairy ladies had bidden him keep, but he longed to know what the message was they had sent to his father and who had carried it. So, when the meal was finished, and Oiagros, taking up his billhook, was going forth to work again, Orpheus said, "You did not tell me, father, who brought you word that I should come home at noon." "Little truant," said Oiagros, pausing on the threshold, "did you think the shepherd lad would forget your message?" Then, seeing the child's bewildered look, he added, laughing, "'Twas well his wits did not go a wool-gathering like a certain bairn's I could tell of, who was found straying leagues away in the mountain pastures, and has forgotten already how he sent me word he was safe housed for the night in a shepherd's cot. Aye, aye, jolly folk are the shepherds, and I warrant they made you such mirth with their tales and jests that you thought no more of your poor father. But when you came not home from play at nightfall, I was glad enough to see that same blithe-faced lad. He was bound, he said, for a sheepcote in the valley, so he stayed but a moment to give me news of you." "I do not believe he was a real shepherd," murmured Orpheus when he was left alone. But not till long afterwards did he learn that the unknown visitant was Hermes, the messenger of the immortals, who in this guise had done the errand of the 9 sisters. Now, for some days Orpheus shunned to meet the woodmen and their children, for, in spite of the marvels he had seen, he could not rid himself of a fear that they would remember what had passed when they last saw him. So soon, however, as he encountered them again, he knew that they also had drunk forgetfulness in the water of the spring, for they greeted him with all their wonted friendliness. Very slowly now the time went by, while he watched nightly the waning of the moon. Endless seemed the interval while her silver lamp was darkened, and only the chill light of stars glimmered above the sleeping forest. But at last her crescent, like a pearly boat, breasted once more the purple flood of the twilight, and then the child could feel he had not long to wait for the promised night when he should hear another wonder tale. In his faith that the 9 sisters would keep tryst with him, he was content to leave all to them, and did not seek to find his way again to their enchanted well. But when the longed-for night was come, and they had made no sign, he stole from his sleeping father's side, and sat disconsolate on the moonlit lawn before their door. There, though he had come out broad awake, he fell suddenly asleep, and once again the trill of a nightingale mingled with his dreams. This time, however, it came blended with a soft whirring of wings, and Orpheus had the sense of being borne swiftly through the air on a feathery cloud. And this time it was without wonderment that he awoke to find himself in the midst of the 9, beside the well of memory. They greeted him only with their eyes, and Calliope, as though but an hour had passed since he listened to Urania's tale, said straightway, "Who will tell Orpheus the story he waits to hear of Cronos's downfall and the triumph of Zeus?" "Let our sister of the olive crown tell it," said Thalia, "for victory and triumph are ever the theme of her songs." Clio smiled and began to speak as follows, waving the laurel bough she held in time to the rhythmic rise and fall of her deep melodious voice. While earth lay buried in the snow that overwhelmed the men of the Silver Age, the children of Cronos dwelt deep within her hollow bosom, and had never beheld as yet the light of day. But when they saw the beasts and birds, their playmates, Hastening forth from that dim place of sanctuary to the free light and air of heaven, they pleaded with their goddess mother to let them also mount into the upper world. Rhea consented, and led them up by winding rocky ways into a vast grotto, whose outer portal opened on a lonely mountaintop. The children looked down from that eyrie on the fair world spreading far below, and up to the sky's crystal vault, and clapped their hands for joy, beseeching their mother that they might no more dwell in the sunless depths. Now she had no heart to deny them, but she bethought her that their laughter and shouts at play might reach the ears of Cronus in the sky if they remained together, and then he would seize them all. She resolved, therefore, to hide each child apart, so that if by ill hap Cronus found one, she might yet save the others. And she carried them one by one to distant lands, east and west and north and south, some to mountain glens, and some to the inmost recesses of untrodden woods, where they grew up solitary, tended by such guardians as she could find for them. But her youngest and best beloved son, who was named Zeus, the goddess left in the mountain cave, and gave him for nurses a troop of Oreads, those shy, fleet nymphs of the hills, and she summoned the shaggy goat-foot satyrs from the woodlands to keep watch around his cradle, that if he cried, they might drown the sound with the rough music of their cymbals. After this, Rhea durst visit her children no more, for as Cronus brooded darkly on things to come, it crossed his mind that his wife was too often absent from their sky palace of late, and he began to watch her narrowly, lest peradventure she were plotting a mischief against him. He dreamed not of the trick played on him, whereby he had cast stones into the pit of darkness in mistake for his children. But now, vexed with nameless doubts and fears, he thought, what if she guesses that it was I who stole the babes from their cradles, and is seeking some revenge? I must bestir myself. I will go down and walk to and fro upon the earth, that if any treachery be afoot, I may spy it out. So mighty Cronus walked to and fro upon the earth, striding over the highest hills and wading the deepest seas, such was his giant stature, and he could see nothing amiss, only he marked that the stone altars which the men of the Golden Age had set up to him in groves and in high places were broken down, and there were none to build them up or offer him sacrifice, whereat he was grieved in his heart. Then he sought out one of his Titan brethren, Prometheus by name, who dwelt in the country called Arcadia, and said to him, Prometheus, I know that you are favored above all her sons by Earth, our mother, who has bestowed on you gifts that we others lack, even eyes that can discern the future, and hands that can mold living creatures out of the formless dust. Come now, grant me a boon. Make me men to inhabit this world I am lord over, for there are none left to offer me the sacrifices I love, and praise my name when I send them sweet rain in spring. This he said, knowing full well that Earth herself would not be persuaded a second time to grant that boon. Know you not, answered Prometheus, that these new men will be weaker and worse by nature than those who have gone before? If they are weaker, said Cronus, they will have the more need to put their trust in my power and call on me for aid. If they are impious and stubborn, I shall destroy them, as I did the second race. But being more feeble, they may also be of milder mood. Whilst you are yet king of all, my brother, said Prometheus, I must do your pleasure. So Cronus left him and went his way. That night Prometheus went down into a deep glen of Arcadia, where flowed a river, and he took red clay of the river bank and tempered it with water, and made men for Cronus of it. All night he wrought, and at sunrise he breathed into them the breath of life, and they lived and moved. But before they came fully to their senses, he departed from them, and they neither knew nor cared to know who had made them, any more than babes new-born. These men of clay were, to look upon, like the tallest and fairest of the race who now inhabit the earth. For Prometheus made them full-grown, but they could not compare in stature, strength, or comeliness with the races of the gold and the silver ages. At first they dwelt in the woods and caves of Arcadia, and all the food they had was acorns and wild berries. Cronos was well pleased with them, because they were a peaceable folk, and because, when they found his ruined altars, they builded them again, and offered the choicest fruits they could find to the god of the bright sky above them, though he was not known to them by any name. And there was still no woman in the world, for the thought of making one had not come to any of the immortals hitherto. But now Earth saw that the hour she had foretold was at hand, for the young Zeus was grown to his full strength. She sent her deep murmuring voice up to him in his mountain grot, bidding him descend and hearken to her counsel. Nothing loath, he obeyed, and in echoing chambers beneath the ocean floor heard her solemn tones, as if it were the muffled booming of the surges overhead, revealing things to come, and all the means whereby he should achieve the victory in store for him. Then, at her behest, he journeyed on, under the midland sea, through endless corridors whose rocky walls shone thick with diamond sparks, through vaults of snowy quartz where veins of gold branched roofwards like avenues of giant ferns, until he came at last to the forge of the Cyclopes in the roots of an island mountain that is called Etna. Now, the Cyclopes are earth-born smiths, swart and grim of aspect, having each a single eye set in the midst of his forehead. The peak of Etna glitters with eternal snow, but in its hollow base is a burning fiery furnace, whence fountains of flame and torrents of molten rock spout forth at times on the mountain-top to the terror of mortals. Beside this furnace the Cyclopes toiled, smelting iron from the ore and forging it upon their anvils. This task was set them by Cronos, and he it was who had shut them up in that nether dungeon. For while they yet dwelt at liberty on the slopes of Etna, he saw their skill in the craft of smiths, and made slaves of them, that all their handiwork might be his alone. The Cyclopes stared in dumb surprise at the young god as he stood before them, but when they heard the errand he was come upon, they were glad, and hastened to do his bidding. For Earth had revealed to him the secret virtue of the stone called brimstone, and how the Cyclopes might forge it into weapons wherewith he should prevail against Cronos. So when Zeus had shown them the pale yellow stone that lay unregarded in many a smoky recess of their cavern, they cast some of it into the furnace, drew it forth in white hot glowing masses, and laid it on the anvils. Then he bade them temper it with water that Earth had given him in a golden cup, ice-cold water of enchantment from a fount of the underworld, and fashion it with hammer strokes into the form of blunt-headed javelins. This the Cyclopes no sooner did than light more dazzling than the noonday sun burst forth from those javelins in arrowy flashes, and a tremendous clap of sound, as it were the rendering asunder of the mountain, reverberated through the cavern. No eye had seen such intolerable radiance, no ear heard the like of that shattering peal, for this was the birth of lightning and of thunder, which as yet were unknown in earth or heaven. Until that day, snow and hail, storm and tempest furnished forth the armory of the sky, weapons so terrible that Cronos, wielding them, might well deem himself invincible. but he was soon to learn that the new forged thunderbolts were more terrible still. Thus armed by the Cyclopes, Zeus went forth to seek his two elder brothers in their hiding places, and bid them aid him to overthrow the tyranny of Cronos. Poseidon, the eldest born, he found far south, in the wilds of Libya, where herds of dun horses roamed the boundless plains. Him a gentle mare had nourished with her milk, and he had grown up a lover and tamer of steeds. But Pluto, the second brother, he found dwelling on the misty coasts of the west, beside the gates of ocean. For there he had been reared by the sisters three, who spin the threads of fate for mortals and immortals. Then the three brethren went in company to the northern lands, where Mount Olympus towers up into the sky, and having scaled his cloudy summit, they made it their citadel and the storehouse of the new thunder. Wherefore Zeus and all his kin have the name of Olympians unto this day. And now there was war in heaven. Cronos, when he saw what was done, called to his aid the Titans, his brothers, and they fought against the young invaders. But vain was their giant strength against the flaming bolts hurled from Olympus. One by one they felt the lightning sear, though it could not consume, their immortal frames, and smitten deep on heart or brow, fell headlong from the crystal ramparts of the sky. Cronos alone was unscathed by his son's thunder, since Zeus was warned of earth to spare him, lest he should provoke a father's curse. And seeing all was lost, he forsook his ancient throne and fled for refuge into the country called by men Italy, but by the gods Hesperia. With him went Rhea, her heart touched with compassion for her stern lord's fall, and choosing, in her faithfulness, rather to share his exile than the triumph of her children. Sadly, they took their way within the passes of the Apennines, and there, in a deep glen, where chestnut boughs shut out the sight of his lost sky, Cronos sat forlorn, his hoary head sunk upon his breast. But Rhea went in search of the vanquished Titans, who lay, groaning with pain and rage, on desert shores or under craggy precipices, and persuaded them to return with her to their fallen king and hold counsel together in this evil plight. Now Prometheus, knowing what must betide, had not obeyed the call of Cronos to battle, and he restrained also his twin brother Epimetheus. These two Rhea found in Arcadia, and at her entreaty they came to Cronos with the rest. Then spoke fierce Enceladus, the hugest of the Titans. Shall we, Earth's firstborn, tamely endure the yoke of this upstart Zeus, this puny rebel that is not half the stature of the least among us? Could I but come to grips with him, I would break him like a reed. Up, Titans, while now these robber gods are reveling at their ease in the sky mansions. Let us rush in upon them and seize that new strange fire wherewith they overcame us. But his brethren sat motionless and silent, for they dreaded to approach the terrible unknown fire that had printed burning scars on their once haughty brows. Rhea saw the thought in their gloomy eyes, and before Enceladus could speak further, "Prometheus," she cried, "have you no word of counsel? Is there nothing in the wide world that can resist the force of those flaming shafts of Zeus?" "There is one thing," answered Prometheus, "yet to know what it is can avail you nothing. For it is not Zeus who has conquered us, but everlasting fate. Against that power the mightiest strive in vain. It setteth up one and pulleth down another. Be patient, brethren, and cease to meditate revenge. As Cronos has had his appointed reign, so also must Zeus, until a stronger than he shall overcome him at the last." Heedless of his prophetic words, the Titans urged him to reveal what was that one thing which could resist the lightning. And he told them it was a certain herb that grew in one spot only of the whole earth, and had such virtue that whatever was anointed with its milk-white juice was proof against both lightning flashes and thunderstone. He told them also the appearance of the herb, but where it grew he would not say. Then the Titans with one consent rose up, bidding Cronus await them in the glen, and went divers ways over the earth, seeking diligently for the herb. But Prometheus, when he saw that they would not hearken to his counsel, departed likewise, and went up to the mansions of the sky, bearing an olive branch in sign that he came peaceably, and he told Zeus of the herb, and how the Titans were gone in quest of it. For these tidings, said Zeus, I am beholden to you evermore. Easily, if they found that herb, would the Titans defy the worst that I could do. Now tell me where I may find it growing. In a cleft of the rocks, replied Prometheus, where an eagle has built her eyrie on the highest peak of Caucasus. Now it was the dawn of day when he came to Zeus. Straightway the new lord of the sky commanded the sun to turn back from his course, and the moon and stars to veil their light, and he covered the firmament with densest clouds. So the whole world lay in darkness for 3 days and nights, and the Titans groped their way as best they might, tearing up pine trees by the roots to serve them for torches. But meanwhile Zeus descended to the peak of Caucasus, and when he had plucked up the herb, he swallowed it. Thus its virtue passed into him, and this is why he alone of the immortals fears not the power of lightning. After this, the world had quiet for a space, for when the Titans heard what was become of the herb, they durst not make war again, but hid themselves in waste places of the earth, biding their time. Then Zeus divided his new realm with his brethren. The sky he kept for himself. The rivers, lakes, and seas he gave to Poseidon, and Pluto he made king over the underworld. As for Prometheus, he would have given him for reward the happy isles that lie near the gates of sunset, far in the western main, and are called Elysium in the speech of the gods. But Prometheus said that he desired nothing for himself. The only boon he would ask was that the happy isles might be given to Cronus and to Rhea. This Zeus granted for the love he had to his mother, and forthwith Prometheus led the discrowned pair to that blessed land. There they dwell at peace in the fadeless Elysian bowers, where winter never comes, nor great winds rave, but ever soft ocean airs blow through groves of frankincense, and over orchard lawns that keep their wealth of bloom and fruitage all the year. And they see no more the light of the sun, for a light that is not of earth, golden, calm, eternal, bathes the happy isles in diviner day. End of The Coming of Zeus, read by Mark Harrington, Framingham, Massachusetts.